The heart knows what it wants, and sometimes when we meet our soulmate, everything just clicks into place. Yes, sometimes there are oceans to navigate and languages to figure out, but at the end of the day, when you know that you are in love, you just make it work. Today, I have the opportunity to introduce you to Sarah, and she talks about the journey she and her wife embarked upon across different countries, time zones, and everything else to become the family that they are today. Welcome to the Becoming Baby Ready podcast, your podcast for queer family planning. My name is Sam, and throughout this podcast, you'll hear me have conversations with professionals who work alongside people who want to start and grow their families, as well as parents of intentionally created families. Everyone I speak to identifies as being part of the 2S LGBTQIA+ community. This is your opportunity to learn answers to questions you didn't even know you had. Welcome, everyone. Today, I have the opportunity to be speaking with Sarah, who's across the ocean from where I sit today. And so while I'm midday, they are at the end of their afternoon and getting ready to look forward to busy evening with children. But I wanted to say first, welcome, Sarah. Thank you for taking time out of your day at this time of day to chat with me. Can you tell us about who you are and the members of your family?
Yeah, sure. Well, thank you for having me, Sam. Again, my name is Sarah. I'm almost 37, so I'll be 37 in 2 weeks. I'm a queer mom. My wife's name is Svenja. She was born in Germany. I was born in the United States. And we have two beautiful children. Our first is Remington, and our second is Raya. They are 3 years old and 1 year old. And we have recently relocated from the United States to Germany back in January. So decided to experience what bringing our kids up in the German culture and with a lot of things that we felt were close to our values and see how that's been going. So yeah, that's a little bit about us.
So I'm going to ask the obvious question from the start. You were in the US, your wife is in Germany. How on earth did the two of you connect?
Yeah, that's a good question. So we joke about this often. We really feel like the stars aligned. I was living in California. I was in chiropractic school at the time. And Svenja had decided, so we were both, she was 29, I was probably 20, yeah, I was 29 as well. But she had decided to do a road trip through California with one of her good friends. So they flew in from Germany. And at the time, I didn't have a lot of queer friends because I was in chiropractic school. And so I was using Tinder for trying to find friends and potential love interests. But I was also very much over, I guess, just dating and it not going anywhere. And I was just kind of fed up with Tinder. So I think I immediately messaged her something on Tinder like, "You don't look like you're from here. Just so you know, I'm not planning on using Tinder very much. So if you want to, converse, let's meet up." And so she explained, "Oh, yeah, I'm visiting. We just got here into San Francisco." So let's meet up tomorrow. And that was the only night that we used Tinder. The next day we met up and I met with her and her friend and we explored in Oakland. And then we were kind of inseparable after that for the couple of weeks that they were with us. And yeah, there's a lot of cool stories that come after that, how we actually got to begin dating. And I went to Germany like a month after that. So for her 30th birthday. And yeah, so it was a lot really quickly. But to answer your question shortly, we initially met
That's
on Tinder.
fair, fair. But I mean, it's a whirlwind and there's many people who will tell you that when you know, you know.
Yeah, it definitely felt like I knew she's such a calming presence and I'm a tornado a lot of the time. And yeah, and she's a very strong woman. And it was just like I was completely enthralled by just how different she was from everyone I had met. And I found an international dating experience. I found that very appealing because I'm very curious about the world, and I could feel that she brought a different perspective than I had known. So that was very
Hmm.
interesting to me.
Yes, and North American culture is truly so different from German culture in so many ways, and yet so similar in other ways. So it would be neat to figure out how to navigate those.
That is very true.
So ultimately, you end up deciding that this is a long-term process that you want to stick together, however you figure out how to navigate that. You spent the
Hmm.
original time, the at the beginning when you were decided committed to the relationship, that was in the US, is that right?
Yeah, that is right. So we like I mentioned earlier, I flew to Germany for her 30th birthday, which was crazy because I pretty much touched down from San Francisco to Germany right in her parents' backyard. So I was meeting everyone right off the bat. I met like 100 Germans at her birthday party and spoke no German. And that's when I said to her at the end of this 4-day trip that I was there, I said, well, I, I really think that I want to be girlfriends, to be dating, to be official and exclusive. And she was like, me
Wow.
too. So yeah, we had a couple of months where we were long distance FaceTiming a lot with the awkward time difference, which was fun. And then on her next break, which was 2 weeks long, she came and spent time with me in the US. And at the end of that trip, I actually proposed.
Wow.
Yeah. So, and she is a teacher. She was a teacher in Germany. And throughout this trip, as we were chatting and getting to know each other more, I'm a very quick person. And I mean, I like to figure out, hey, how can we make things work? I'm a solutions
Right.
person. And so I knew that, or she had shared with me that there was a German international school in Silicon Valley. And so I actually called them and said, "Hey, I just inquired, like, are you in need of any teachers? What could this look like?" This is maybe more detail than you asked for, but I drove there and dropped her off for kind of an interview and to get to know the teaching staff and everyone there. And then after I dropped her off, I went to pick up a ring. And carried it around Sam in my car all afternoon while we had a good time exploring San Francisco. And then we went to Baker Beach. And then when the sun was setting, I proposed. And so what came of that whole trip was yes, we were engaged. And then also she was offered an internship at the German International School. So she came back. That was in the fall, so around October-ish. And she came back in February and we got the opportunity to live together. It was about a year after that we decided that we were going to move to Germany. So then we moved to Germany for about a year for some family reasons and also for Svenja to finish her master's program in Berlin. So Berlin was a very cool experience. But then as we got to the end um, of her program there, I said, okay, well, I really like I was about to be a chiropractor before we met. I know my world got flipped upside down, but I really want to be a chiropractor. So can I go back to school now? And the States is really where you've got to be for that. So yeah, so then I moved back to the States a little bit before her, and unfortunately, that the timing wasn't super stellar because after a couple of months of me being back in California, finished or getting back into chiropractic school, that's when COVID hit. So we were separated for a bit. Luckily, because at that time we were already legally married, she was allowed to enter the US a couple of times during that whole span that we were separated. And then she started teaching in us. So the next fall, yeah, she started teaching and we were able to live again together. And then yes, we were in California for several years and then North Carolina for a year, and then now yes, we're in Germany.
Wow.
So
So you've been lots of places, but and you've navigated an awful lot during the time you've been together. Not the least of which,
this is true.
not the least of which is that you added to your family and created a
Yeah.
family beyond just the two of you. Was that something that the two of you talked
Yeah.
about really from the beginning, or was it not until you kind of got yourselves a little bit more settled? School was behind you. Now what's next?
Yeah, actually, I'm sure we had the conversations that absolutely we both wanted to be parents. We both wanted to be mothers. We hadn't really discussed the intricacies of that, but it was, I suppose, because I was still in chiropractic school when we decided, okay, there's not going to be any better time. And for whatever reason, I was so ready. Like I just had baby fever, like really big time at the moment whenever we started discussing it. So yeah, it was just something that came to be on our mind more often. And we found ourselves, like anyone interested in having babies as a queer couple, trying to figure out, okay, how do we do this? Even if we're not ready right now, then what
Yep.
does that look like? And the more that we started learning, the more that we were just super inspired. And then I was like, okay, we know how to do it. Like, let's do it.
So then the decisions, I mean, deciding to do it is one thing, and that's a huge decision. But it's not a huge decision, and now we just start trying, and it happens when it happens. It's a huge decision to do it, and then it's a huge decision for
Yeah,
how you're going to get pregnant, who's going to carry, what kind of a donor you're using, known or unknown. Like, how do you start working through
yeah.
those decisions?
Yeah. Well, we started with who would be carrying. Svenja had always mentioned that she was curious about having her own genetic child as well and going through that process as a woman. And I was like, well, I really want to do it. Like, I need to go first. I want to so bad. And then also there was this funny kind of like, I'm a bit more I don't want to say like tough loving, but if Svenja's got a cold or something, she's like, okay, I'm down for the count. I need to rest. It's also part of her culture. Me as an American, I'm like, I'm gonna keep going. And I think it was, and I'm also like a bit tough as a prior Marine. And it just we had this thought that if I go first, then I'll have a bit more empathy for her throughout her
Okay.
pregnancy. So this was a bit of a deciding factor too, but that's kind of where we started. Okay, who's going to go first? And then obviously, just researching the cryobanks that we knew there's California Cryobank, which is where we ended up purchasing our donor sperm, and that was a really fun experience too. To learn about this person that would be donating their sperm and help us create our family. And as soon as those pieces kind of lined up, and then we figured out like what my care would look like, then it was just the excitement of waiting to try the
Mhm.
first time. So yeah, the planning that goes into trying to figure out what that might look like in terms of timing, and there was all that excitement that just kind of built up. I remember it was during my exam week at the end of one of my quarters of chiropractic school that my doctor called me and said, okay, I'm rethinking this. I think today's the day. And I had to like literally leave school, called her, she left work, and we met at the clinic at Stanford. So that was pretty funny. And then we took a second sitting in the back of my car with the tailgate up, and we're just talking about, okay, maybe this happened. And then I went back and took another exam. So yep, we're like, okay, hug, kiss, love you, bye. Hope it worked.
That's right. So my guess is that you were using IUI at that time, or were you doing IVF? Yeah.
Yes, correct. We did
Yeah.
IUI.
And
Yeah,
and was that the time that you conceived your eldest child?
it
Wow.
was. It was. Yes, it was. Yeah, I think I knew, but I don't know how to explain this. And if anyone's spiritual and listening to this, it's not to say that you know when you know, but I really had a strong feeling going into the several weeks leading up that I was really ready and that our first child was ready to meet us, and in a
Hmm.
soul kind of
Yeah.
journey way. I don't know. I just was really praying hard on it in my way, and yeah. So I remember leaving and being like, I just yeah, this is it. So we did get very lucky
You
with
did.
that.
You did.
And yeah, so it was very funny that I actually Svenja was doing a trip to Germany shortly thereafter, and my opportunity to take my first pregnancy test was when she was in Germany. So I actually she said, yeah, go ahead. I was visiting my folks in New Jersey, and I called her up and said, well, is this real?
Thank goodness for things like
Um,
FaceTime. So you can essentially learn at the same
yeah,
time, right? Because you can see it too and
yeah.
everything else. I just love this whole picture I have in my head now of you writing an exam, going and being inseminated, going back to write another exam, and in there somewhere a baby was
Exam.
conceived.
I know, isn't it? It's bizarre, right? It really is bizarre, but it is extremely fun. And I'm sure that, hetero couples have these whirlwinds of emotions, and they're trying to balance how to create a child in their busy lives. But sometimes when it happens, you just, in retrospect, you remember everything that your heart was
Yeah.
feeling in all those moments, and that you're just trying to cross your fingers and be hopeful because you're really ready for this family that you've
Hmm.
envisioned. And yeah, it was really fun to even just walk through that with you because I forget all these little things.
But it's so intentional how we create our families. So it's possible to pull so many of those memories back when we slow down and let ourselves. Where there's lots of other people who will say,
Hmm.
I don't know, I knew we wanted to," and that's for the people who are actually essentially trying, but trying for themselves at home. And I guess at this
Yeah,
point it happened, but when you have to receive the call to say this is it, and then
sure.
make the arrangements to get there, then those are all pieces that
Yeah.
are, because it's intentional, are just, they're just lodged in there in the back of the brain. At some point they surface to remind you how that day was.
Yeah.
And then it's funny because you remember the weather and the smell and the sounds and the everything, right?
Sure. Who you talked to that day, like what you were feeling. Yeah, because it's there are, like you mentioned, and there are so many steps that you have to get through and walk through, and the whole time you're trying to prepare yourself for, well, what if
Hmm.
this doesn't go well, or what if this is miscalculated, or there's lots of unknowns as you go through because there's also the medical exam before that's not really standard when a hetero couple is
No.
trying to conceive, and you just know so much
Right.
about yourself and your potential capability to carry a baby, and you're like, okay, well, I
Yeah,
hope this is all
exactly.
aligning.
Exactly. And then you look at it as an alternative healthcare provider, albeit a student at the time, but that almost makes you more enmeshed in the alternative healthcare side of things than once you get into practice. Your intuitive understanding and knowledge of how your body works just gives you that added level of
Yeah, you know too
awareness.
much.
Fair,
Yeah.
fair.
Yeah, so that's
Um,
true.
so
Hmm.
you got pregnant first try, as you were supposed to, because that's just what happened at that time. How was the pregnancy and birth and all of that? Did things go fairly smoothly for you?
Yes, yes and no. So my pregnancy was wonderful. I'm one of those weirdos, I suppose, who absolutely loved being pregnant. It was the most special time of my life, and I'm still trying to convince Anya, don't tell anyone, but I'm still trying to convince her to for us to consider it because I really would like that experience again. And I would love more kids. But anyway, nonetheless, my pregnancy was really great. I will say that I had some coverage through the VA because I'm a veteran and have most of my care through the VA, or did at the time in the States. And my referral was to Stanford, which is a bit of a high risk hospital in terms of pregnancy care. I'm a little bit older, but I wasn't really too old. But there was a lot more, I would say, um, just a lot of checkups and things like this that kind of did provide a little bit of added stress that I didn't necessarily want for my pregnancy, but that was the standard of
Hmm.
care. So um, I tried really hard to envision myself being very natural in childbirth, and unfortunately the kind of getting to my due date began to be a pressure because I had my family, my folks flying in from New Jersey shortly after the due date. And so, yeah, one thing kind of led to another, and I opted to get a sweep the day before my due date because they were also trying to convince me uh, to have Pitocin and whatnot to try to move things along because I had elevated blood pressure towards the end of the pregnancy. They were worried about
Hmm.
preeclampsia. And yeah, this was something that I really wanted to avoid doing was getting induced. But the sweep kind of it definitely moved things along, but probably a bit before Remy was ready, I
Hmm.
believe. Because I that day I had went out for a long walk and yeah, the things happened that you knew things were happening, but then my water, when it broke, I saw a spot of meconium. And so that sent me into a bit of a frenzy of, okay, well, has this put my baby in distress? Because that's from what I did know, I know that that could be a sign that he was in distress. So yeah, and I was having contractions. They weren't super strong, but they were very
Okay.
frequent. So instead of being able to labor at our home like I had envisioned, I called Svenja. I called my sister, who's a family doc, and they said, call the hospital. So I did, and they said, come on in. So I was definitely there a bit earlier than I had wanted, and I was able to go. I want to say it was almost 24 hours that I was able to convince them, like, hey, I really don't want to use Pitocin. I'm having
Hmm.
contractions. Can we just see if they pick up with strength? And they did pick up in strength, but I wasn't progressing at all. So at a certain point, close to 24 hours, I said, okay, we really need to start with the Pitocin. And that was a long journey after that and a very hard journey for a good
Yeah.
amount of hours. Yeah, so yeah, then things got a little bit rocky for a while. There was a lot of kind of rushing into the room, getting an internal fetal monitor on Remy. And just I was trying my best to just be like, okay, everything's
Hmm.
gonna be all right. And it obviously did end up being
Hmm.
okay. But yeah, there were some stressful hours there towards the end, but I was able to push out my healthy baby boy, our healthy baby boy. And the first thing that I said is like, I remember just like,
Yeah.
you're real.
Right.
You're real. Like you just can't believe it. You're like, oh my goodness, like this is
Yeah.
real. So it was ultimately a beautiful experience, but yeah, it was a lot. It was a lot for us for
And it
sure.
is, and it's a huge transition for our bodies to go through that. And the fact that you listened to your body so much through and it's not a slight against anyone else, but often we've not been taught to have the confidence in our bodies to do whatever it is we're asking our bodies to do,
Hmm.
to then question someone who's in a position of authority like an obstetrician and say, can we wait
Hmm.
on this? Like, what is the risk if we
Yeah.
wait? Can I give my body some time to try and do some of this on its own? Um,
Yeah.
I think I think that in all of what you said is also a really powerful statement that if things feel to you that you need more time, you don't have to say yes or no, but even just to ask, is there a risk? Can
Yeah.
I do this?
Yeah. Yeah, that was definitely where I landed myself early after I had pretty much around the same time or even before that had a lot of OBGYN classes and chiropractic or pediatric chiropractic and lots of things. So I was learning about things. And then also I found a podcast that I really kind of latched on about positive birth experiences and understanding what kind of modern medicine and how it's been viewed and what we kind of think is normal in
Hmm.
pregnancy and birth, and then what actually is normal. And I won't say normal because there certainly is a time for
Sure.
place for every kind of intervention. But at the same time, if we don't have any kind of understanding or confidence in ourselves that, hey, this is a natural process, then it's very easy to get into a hospital or birthing center and not ask questions and just go with every kind of flow. And then before you know it, like we have multiple friends that we hear the birth stories and it's just horrifying to them because they were just completely unprepared and one thing leads
Mhm.
to another and then you feel like the entire birthing process is out of your hands. So this is something I didn't want to feel, and I didn't want to put Remy in any or our baby in any kind of jeopardy that I
Right.
could think of, you know what I mean? So
Yep.
yeah, but luckily it there was a good balance of me trying to ask questions and ask them with Stanya and be
Hmm.
supported. And then at the end of the day, you have to make the calls that
Sure.
you do have to make the calls when you have professionals telling you, hey, this is
Yeah.
what we're seeing. This is how we need to communicate with you to get you to do what we think is advisable and within their standard of care because they're just trying to help as well.
Exactly.
So
Exactly. They're not
yeah.
out to do
Hmm.
anything that's not good for you or the baby.
Yeah. And even still, I will say, Sam, this is something that just because we're talking about queer parenthood, like when we walked into the hospital, I did have this kind of like a little bit of a stitch on my shoulder. Like, are we going to be getting treated differently?
Yep.
Are they going to communicate? If we have, for instance, if we see a lot of male doctors throughout the time of our stay, are they, or
Hmm.
even female, like it really doesn't matter. But am I ever going to be put into a position where their ability to hear our voice, is it ever going to be jeopardized because of what they see? And luckily that was not the case at all for us, but I know that
Yep.
that's not everybody. So you just have to go with a plan. Like I did have a birthing plan and really try to hear but also speak up when you need
Yeah,
to.
absolutely. And that's really, really important. And I think that that's a fear, a concern, and a thought that virtually all queer parents that I talk to have, that they just don't know
Mhm.
who the team is that they're going to be meeting and what their thought processes are. And
Yeah.
overwhelmingly,
Yeah, I
mostly I
don't.
hear good stories, but I don't always.
Yeah.
I have to ask as an aside, so how old was Remy? How many hours old was Remy before he had his first adjustment?
Remy was it was actually like a couple of days. Raya, our second born, after I've had a lot because I wasn't licensed yet, and so this was something that I was just like, okay, we're gonna get home. We're not gonna make a big scene out of this, and we didn't make a big scene with Raya. But Raya was only about 5 hours old or something like this. But Remy, I just mostly evaluated him, and then within the next week, I took him to a chiropractor that I had seen throughout my whole pregnancy because she was also very good with babies. And yeah, this was something I felt more comfortable with
Sure.
as still in school because I actually didn't graduate until after. Yeah, I was in my last quarter. I took a quarter off when I had Remy, and then I got back and finished my last quarters. So
And that makes perfect sense
yeah.
that you waited and then had him adjusted by someone else. But as someone
Hmm.
who works very closely with chiropractors,
Yeah.
and my own children were adjusted within the first week, but most chiros I know are
Cool.
like, that baby's about
Oh
3 hours
yeah.
old. It's about time.
It's time. Yeah, I was just waiting for some signs from Raya that she was like uncomfortable. That was the first thing when I was like, okay, let's check her.
Yeah, yeah.
I'm just waiting. Just let us all have our, little peaceful golden hours, but then let's see. Like what can we do to help her out? Because
Exactly.
it's such a traumatic event no matter how. And I love that
Yeah.
the gift of chiropractic.
Yeah.
So
I'm an avid consumer myself, so and have been since I
good.
was a child. So for me, it's normal, and I recognize that for some listeners, it may sound very unusual what it is that we're speaking of. But for me, for my family,
Sure.
it works, and it's something that we utilize to as part of our regular healthcare process.
That's really awesome.
Yeah, yeah.
Very good.
Hold on for just a moment. We'll be right back. You know about babyREADY because you're listening to this podcast, so you know that we are all about queer family planning and helping you have the family of your dreams. But did you know that we don't abandon you once your baby arrives? We actually offer parenting coaching as well, and that's not just for the newborn phase, although we are there for that, but it's through toddlerhood and young children, tweens, and even through the teen years. When you need someone unbiased to lend an ear so that they can hear where your struggles truly are and help you come up with a path and a plan that feels truly right for you and your individual family, don't hesitate to reach out. We are always happy to be there for you. Visit us at www.babyready.info for more information. You get Remy home, you are parenting this child. Clearly, at some point, you thought, okay, well, one wasn't enough. Let's do this again. So, was it Svenja's turn?
So at first it wasn't necessarily. For a little while we bounced around in our head about reciprocal IVF. We thought about that because Svenja was a little bit on the fence. Like some days she absolutely wanted to do the whole birthing experience herself. Other days we would talk about it. It was really truly that she just wanted to have a genetic child as well. There were so many different conversations, and then some days it wouldn't matter, and then other days, and she would. And then from my side, it also would be like, okay, how was I feeling? Was I more in my feels about how much I wanted to
Mm-hmm.
carry another baby, or was I going to listen to her and try to empower her
Fair.
to, hey, like you can
Yep.
do this, and it is what you want, and you can do this. Like this is not something that's off the table for you. So why don't you experience it? And I have full faith that you'll be okay if you do. And so it really depended on the day, but ultimately it came down to like, hey, I would like to do this, and I was like, okay. I'll cry a little bit because I want to do it again, but you do it.
No, yes, and part of that is too. I hear that it's easier the second time round, so do I want it?
Yeah. And that was the funny thing is that we kept hearing that in the hospital and be like, see, Svenja, see, next time it's going to be easier. But like ultimately, we would also have a little joke in the back of our head because I think we both knew that she
Yeah.
would be
So the
next.
second is still going to be a second, but first.
Yeah.
So did were
Yeah.
you able to use the same donor with the child that Svenja carried?
Yep. We were. We were. That was awesome.
How did that process unfold for her? Did she have as easy a time to conceive as you did?
Pretty much with a couple of nuances. So we knew from my cycle that my cycle is a bit irregular, and we probably wouldn't have tried at home anyway because we felt like we needed the additional insight from medical providers to guesstimate my ovulation day. But hers was always very regular, so we thought like, hey, why don't we? There's nothing really, to lose necessarily. Of course, donor sperm is expensive, but we had bought purchased
Hmm.
four at once. So we did try once at home and it was not a positive pregnancy. And then once we got settled in North Carolina, so it was a couple months later after that, we tried again with IUI with her. And with Svenja, her first IUI try was successful.
So you have children that are biologically related. You have pregnancies that are fairly easily conceived in the grand scheme of things compared to the stories you hear from some
Mhm.
other people. What was her pregnancy like?
Yeah, luckily I did not have to be feeling bad about my tough love kind of because she had a wonderful pregnancy too.
Excellent.
She really did. She was juggling Remy, so he was a busy, I guess what, 1 year old? Yeah, 1 and 2 year old. But yeah, she did magnificently. She was under chiropractic care the whole time with me, which was awesome. And besides the fact that I think it was, we had just moved to a new place, we didn't have a lot of connections. Her whole family's in Germany. Like the emotional side of all of this process, kind of doing it alone. I was busy working a lot. She really did have a great pregnancy. So yeah, we're very happy for that, that she was healthy and did really well.
Was it a pretty straightforward labor and birth for her as well? I mean, I don't know that yours wasn't necessarily straightforward, but it ended up that way.
Yeah, so we experienced a bit of confusion and a different culture in North Carolina with her pregnancy care, I felt. And she also did a little bit. So this put me on guard a bit, but I had to do a lot of just listening to Svenja and her wishes because even though I wanted to advocate for things that I felt were best for pregnancy, she ultimately had to make the decision. So she told me pretty much up front, like, if they recommend an epidural, I'm fine with that. If they recommend X, Y, and Z, I'm fine with that. And towards the end of her pregnancy, they started recommending a C-section, which felt a little rushed. And I got honestly a vibe from the practitioners I
Hmm.
didn't love. But I had to keep putting that aside. I would discuss it with her and she'd say, I don't want to focus on that. I just want to have as like she I mean also she did not know what to expect even though she experienced my um pregnancy and birth with Remy, but being also a native German speaker, she was really fluent in English, but I think there was just also this level of
Hmm.
confusion for her that let's keep this as simple as possible and trust the doctors. And so I was like, okay, let's do that. Um and yeah, the actual so she chose to get induced then when and had a scheduled see or had a day that she was planning to come in and get induced and then if things didn't go well then she had already kind of agreed like yes I'll do a
Okay.
C-section. This was all really rushed in the appointments but she really felt so there was one component that we were juggling. I do remember now that we're talking about it is that we had a friend from Germany, a young woman that she used to babysit for back in Germany, who is now grown, who said, "Can I help you during this
Oh,
time?" And we didn't have anyone to come and be with Remington when we would have to be
right.
at the hospital. So we had a 2 week long period where our friend from Germany, Madeleine, was coming to help us, and we were running to the end of that time period.
Yep.
So this is I'm now remembering this is what also played into our decision and Spenya's decision. But yeah, so yeah, long story short, after being induced and trying all the different methods with induction, she wasn't progressing, was having a hard time, and did get a C-section, which she was totally fine with. If you even when I just asked her before I
Yeah.
bopped up here, she said, "Yeah, just tell her everything was great.
Yep.
Like we're happy, my pregnancy, birth, delivery,
Yep.
everything was good." So from her perspective, yeah, she's like it was all good. But that experience was wild in the
Hmm.
moment. I did not know what to expect with that experience. And yeah, so she was it was a lot for us to take in, but happily Raya was extremely healthy, beautiful little baby girl. And I got to hold her and I really had to convince myself for a couple of hours there that Svenja was going to be
Yep.
okay.
Yep.
But she was. So that was hard to stand there and watch and just be strong with her. But yeah.
It does make a difference. And it's something, again, that their cishet peers can't wrap their heads around because you can't both be pregnant and carry a child in a cishet relationship. One does it and one doesn't. And so when you've been down the path before and you have an understanding of how your body felt and reacted to the way things unfolded for you, you can't help when it's someone that you love that's bringing another family member into your family that's having things happen differently for them than they did for you. Whether it was induction and not induction, whether it was cesarean and not cesarean, when it's different, you also then have to find a
Yeah,
way to navigate your own feelings about processing everything while still supporting them through all of it, right?
sure.
It's big.
It's very true. It was all very unknown. And yeah, I don't even have words. I just remember how scared Svenja was, and I mean, I did not know how a C-section goes, and not to like scare anyone, but it's quite invasive. So yeah, but yeah, it was crazy, but it was also exactly how things were meant to go for her, and she is doing awesomely, and she healed well, and so yeah, we're very happy that ultimately that's how it went.
And that's how you hope things will go. Now, I have a question for you. You've relocated at this point in your lives to North Carolina for this birth. So,
Yes.
when you were
Hmm.
in California, your thought process was, how will we be received at the hospital as a queer couple coming in to have a baby in a space that is stereotypically much more progressive, welcoming, and accepting of the queer
Yeah.
community. Now you're in North Carolina
Hmm.
that has blue bubbles, but doesn't necessarily have a big reputation for being as accepting and
Yeah.
welcoming. Did you have that same niggling worry as you were going to go in to have this baby, to have Raya?
Yes, a little bit. We had never experienced any outward discrimination or any derogatory comments or anything like this to our family or us. Like we had a queer flag out front of our house. And but there was this feeling or a vibe for us that we definitely felt different within the hospital, mostly in pregnancy care or like leading through up through her pregnancy. And there was no inkling of that feeling with anyone that we encountered on the day that we went to the hospital, like whatsoever. The nursing staff, they were awesome. Like I immediately after Ryo was born, like figured out how to get them delivered these crumble cookies because I was like, they were just rock stars. They were
Love it.
so awesome. But the actual practitioner, the actual doctors that were there, the men, the two old men that were, yeah, I really did not like them whatsoever. Like the first night when I went home to go check on Remy and our dogs, and I was like, I had to call on someone other than Svenja because I did not want to cause a scene when I got back to the hospital because I had so many words, Sam, that I wanted to talk with these
Yeah.
people about, but I was like, just leave it,
Yeah.
let it go. And I did talk to a couple of the nursing staffs, like when we were bathing Raya the first time, I just like let a couple of things out, like, hey, like, is this
Hmm.
normal? Is this how he behaves with everyone? And the people basically, an older nurse basically said, well, you know what? He's been here for a long time and he needs to get out. So it's that kind of thing. So I was like, okay, it's not just us, it's pretty much everyone. So leave it for what it is and move
But
on.
there's also a sense of peace, for lack of a better word, knowing that it wasn't directed at you because of who you are, but just directed at you
Sure.
because it's time to retire and I'm just crusty and nasty with
It's
everybody.
just some
Yeah.
behavioral traits. Yeah, and the other thing that really helped a lot is we had a really great neighbor that we connected with quickly when we moved to North Carolina. And so she's immediately texting us like, "Can I put a pink ribbon on your mailbox for when you come home?" And I'm like, "Yeah, do it," because apparently a tradition that we didn't know about
Right.
in the South. So we're like, we're just gonna embrace where we are. It's fine. Like we've got love around us. That's all that
And that's
matters.
what keeps you going, especially when you faced something that felt icky. It just didn't feel like what you wanted. So you
Yeah.
need to embrace that.
That's a good way to explain it. I felt really icky and but glad or happy, happily I know that Svenja did not. Like we talked about a couple things that were said, but other than that, she was like, just don't even worry about it, Sarah. And I was like, okay,
Yeah.
fine. Yeah.
Well, there is that. And as someone who spent time living in Europe and speaking fluently, now I was in Belgium and I was speaking French fluently, you speak about what you know very well, and you can find the colloquialisms and you can find the subtleties and everything else about the things you know. But the things you don't know, you may
Hmm.
understand the language that's being spoken and be able to answer the questions, but you don't necessarily get the innuendos
Sure.
and things the same way. So to what you said
Right.
before, I mean, she speaks English fluently, but she hasn't spoken English about giving birth fluently probably lots of times. So it's not, so some
Yeah.
things thankfully maybe she didn't necessarily get the same way because that's just not part of the English she speaks.
Yeah, it's true. And I would just say from my experiences in life and things that I've been through, I definitely am a little bit more limited in the trust that I just willingly
Yeah,
give people. And she's a bit more relaxed about that. So yeah, I think there were multiple components that played into it, but ultimately that's why, it's good that
sure.
there's two people in a relationship and you talk about things and figure out how to respond
Yep,
together, and that's it.
absolutely.
So
So now you have two beautiful babies, and maybe that's all.
yeah, maybe.
And so when you were in Germany before you were in Berlin, you were in a big city, now you're in a small town. How does that feel compared to your experience when you were living in Germany before you went back to finish your degree?
Um, Germany, yeah, so it's very different. I mean, thankfully, where we are has a very much small town feel, but it's also quite like a rather big city. So there's multiple kind of layers to where we are, but it's really awesome to be near our Oma and
Hmm.
Opa. They're the kids' grandparents. They're wonderful people, and some of like Svenja's brother and some friends and whatnot. So that part is really good. We were a little bit more out there in Berlin
Hmm.
on our own, even though the city is really cool to explore when you're young and don't have kids. But yeah, it's different. It's been a big adjustment. Walking, especially for me, just I feel like I never have time to really study German, so I'm kind of always just
Yeah.
winging it. Um, and hoping that as the kids get a little older, I'll have more time to devote to it, or just I won't be well slept at all because I have to do classes at like 9 p.m. But but yeah, but I mean the thing that really keeps me going though, Sam, is that there are so many aspects about life for kids in Germany that is exactly as I had envisioned or
Yeah.
hoped for. So yeah, it's really good in that sense. So it makes my heart full, and I know that we'll just kind of continue to tackle what it is like, and yeah, that's kind of it,
Yeah.
I
And are
guess.
you able to practice chiropractic in Germany?
Unfortunately, not. So, in some cases, yes. Like, for instance, in Berlin, chiropractic is a bit bigger than here. There are a couple of chiropractors around this area, but I had a couple of job offers with some chiropractors I connected with in Berlin. But here, and the advantage in Berlin is a lot of people speak both
Mm.
languages, English and German, like pretty regularly. Here, where we live, that's not as common. And also, there's only like one chiropractor and not currently hiring. So the problem is I would have to work under someone else's license in Germany, because in Germany you have to have what's called a Heilpraktiker. It's pretty much like a license that covers every kind of alternative holistic um like modalities, so like including acupuncture, physical
Mhm.
therapy, so on and so forth, if you want to have your own practice, if
Yeah.
that makes sense. And I've heard from many chiropractors that it's quite a bear of an exam
Right.
process, and being fluent is definitely a
Yeah.
a must. So I think eventually I'll figure it out, whether it's working with another chiropractor with their license, or go the long
Yeah.
route. Who knows? But right now it's something that, unfortunately, for my heart, I kind of have to put a little bit on the back burner and just prioritize our kids and our family and getting
Right.
settled more. But yeah, I'm hopeful. I'm hopeful because I definitely love being a
Yeah.
chiropractor.
And I mean, I know you have to write a licensing exam here in Canada, but then if a Canadian chiro wanted to go to the US and practice, they'd have to do a US licensing
Hmm.
exam. But that's just strictly within chiropractic and not adding all
Chiropractic,
the other
yeah.
modalities to it. That's a lot.
Yeah.
That's a lot.
Yeah. I think I'd be okay with trying to sit for the exam, but I don't barely even know German to have to know medical terminology and all that. That's the part that really just keeps me from thinking that's my course. But yeah,
Hey,
we'll see.
there's a lot of
We'll
life
see.
left.
There is. I have to tell myself that. I only really realize that though, Sam, when I think about that our kids are not even like they're still 10 years before they're even like looking like a real human.
Yeah.
Like you know what I mean? Like and that's a lot of
Yep.
time. So yeah, it's
Excellent.
okay. It's all right.
Yep.
I'll figure
And
it
you
out.
will. And that's the thing. You will. You will figure it out. I just wanted to kind of understand how things worked because it's different everywhere.
Yeah, sure. Yeah, a lot of people don't even know what chiropractors are here, and then there's so many people that are like, "Oh, I saw this one American chiropractor, and they fixed my herniated disc. That's amazing. Why don't we have chiropractors here in Germany?"
Yeah.
Like you hear both kind of stories right now, so it's interesting. It feels like, and I feel this with a lot of things that there's like a big lag from the U.S. to Germany, but also there's a lot of really meaningful or intentional, good kind of slower progress in other areas. So it's
Hmm.
interesting to
Hmm.
see.
So you are hanging out with kids and Svenja's working. Is she teaching in Germany?
That's correct. Yep, we I'm mostly with our 1-year-old Raya. She's hilarious, but I also Remy is doing well in Kita now. So Kita is like the equivalent of daycare preschool in Germany, and he's finally settled in there and doing that by himself, or I just drop him off and get him settled and then go. Originally, when we first moved here, there's kind of like a long stability period where you're going with them for a couple of hours. So that was challenging to navigate, but now things are getting a bit more
Right.
routine and he's loving it and doing well. But yeah, so that's how we're doing
Excellent.
things right
And
now.
I one of the things that I love, and I noticed this when I lived in Europe and I was a teenager at the time, was listening to little kids speak a language different than my own native tongue. Like I would hear these 2-year-olds and 3-year-olds
Yeah.
start speaking French, and I was like, "Oh, isn't that cute? They also speak French. They don't speak English, but but it just
Right. I totally know what you mean. I was the same way when I first saw little kids in Germany and heard them speak. I'm like, oh my gosh, you're so smart. And then all of a sudden, I'm like, whoa, wait a minute. But it's really funny to see Remy because he grew up with, yes, Svenja spoke to him sometimes in German, but she even asked her, she says, I like speaking English better because it's far easier than
right.
German. It comes more naturally to her now because she's been in the States for so long. But Remy understands a lot of German, but he couldn't
Mm.
really speak it. And so I was horrified when I first got him into Kita because this is the time when he was like beginning to blossom with his
Yeah.
voice and he's speaking all English. Now he's going to go somewhere where everyone's
Yeah.
speaking German to him and the kids are speaking German to him. But it's very cute because he's finally hit a stage where you can tell that he understands there's a difference in both languages. It's not just that he's hearing some abnormal noises because he'll want to repeat stuff that we start saying in English and then German to teach him phrases, or he'll repeat what other
Yeah.
kids say. And he's like, you can tell he's like
Yeah.
proud of himself. And it's really cute.
It,
Yeah.
it is it's such a it's a mind trip for sure, but it's a lot of fun.
hmm I'm like, hey, if I can keep up with him and he can do it, then I
That's
can do
right. That's right.
it.
Right? There's your benchmark. I'm just going to stay on par with him. There you go. That's a great benchmark
Yeah.
to set, actually. Uh, Before I let you get back to your evening, can you tell me what is your very, very favorite part of parenting these two sweet children?
Oh gosh, that's really hard to say. I don't even think I could name one. I mean, I think waking up in the morning and you being the first thing the first person that they want to talk to, and every time there's something new, you hear
Mhm.
mommy or mama. Like I just heard Remy scream mama, and my heart does a little flutter. Like I love every ounce of motherhood, honestly,
Yeah,
of parenthood. Um, yeah, and I wouldn't even say that I know, like, did I love the newborn? Did I love the one? Did I love the two? Did I love the three? Because everything new that starts to happen, I'm like, this is the
right.
coolest part. And then I'm like, that's the coolest part. There's a lot of fun to it. And even just I love dreaming about what life's going to feel like when I'm old and I still have this whole other life to get to
Yeah.
be a part of that is still so young and vibrant. And yeah, I don't know. I've always just thought about long term that's going to be really cool to see what our kids end up doing and how they experience the world and life,
Right.
and yeah, it's just all really good.
I love that. Hey, that's pretty great. That's pretty amazing. I want to thank you so much for taking the time to chat with me and share your story. It was a lot of fun.
For sure. It was a blast. Yeah, I hope that some things are helpful to people. And then, I really just appreciate getting the chance to talk about something that we don't really get to talk about too much.
Yeah.
So,
And it's important. Our stories, we need to share our stories.
totally. I agree. Thank you.
As a queer individual with colonial lineage, I want to first acknowledge the land upon which I live and work. Being from what is now known as Burlington, Ontario, I recognize the original ancestry of these lands as they span from Lake Ontario to the Niagara Escarpment and beyond. These lands are steeped in Indigenous history that benefits my community every day. The territory is mutually covered by the Dish with One Spoon Wampum Belt Covenant, an agreement between the Iroquois Confederacy, the Ojibwe, and other allied nations to peaceably share and care for the resources around the Great Lakes. I would like to acknowledge that the land on which I stand is part of the treaty lands and territory of the Mississaugas of the Credit. The land dictates everything about our ways of being. Particularly, the land teaches us about fluidity. Concepts of the binary system and heteropatriarchy were imposed by the colonials who were, at the same time, removing children from their homes, families, and all that was familiar to them. These same children were divided by the only two prescribed binaries recognized by the settlers, and they were forced to conform to a performative, gendered falsehood. The land doesn't operate under binary thinking. It is diverse, complex, and unpredictable at times. Rather, the land holds us and all of our remarkable paths and identities. Every organism and spirit has a purpose. It is from this understanding that I strive to live and grow. Thank you for joining me today on the Becoming Baby Ready podcast. If you have a story that you'd like to share, or you know someone who might, if you're a professional who works in the capacity of helping people start and grow their families, and you identify as being a part of the 2S LGBTQIA plus community yourself, then please don't hesitate to reach out. We always have room for more stories to share, and there's always more learning to do.